In the first part of our story, we followed Puyi from the throne of the Forbidden City to his new role as the ruler of Manchukuo, a kingdom built on illusions. Now, in part 2, we explore the next 3 decades of his life, the years of Japanese control, the fall of the empire he thought was his humiliating capture, and finally, his unlikely transformation into an ordinary citizen of Communist China. This is the story of how the last emperor of China lived through war, betrayal, and re-education. In 1932, the Japanese formally installed Puyi as the head of their new puppet state, Manchukuo. At first, he held the title of chief executive, but in 1934, he was elevated to Emperor of Manchukuo, under the reign title Kangde. To Puyi, it seemed like the restoration he had dreamed of since childhood. He wore imperial robes again, performed court rituals, and was addressed as emperor. But the reality was far different. Behind every decision stood Japanese advisors. The Kwantung Army, Japan's military force in Manchuria, controlled everything from Manchukuo's economy to its laws. Puyi's ministers answered not to him, but to Tokyo. Puyi's palace in Changchun, renamed Xingqing, became a gilded prison. He was watched constantly, his movements restricted, his correspondence monitored. Even the servants in his household were often Japanese agents. In his personal life, Puyi found little happiness. His wife, Empress Wanrong, fell deeper into despair. Isolated and neglected, she became addicted to opium, a habit encouraged by Japanese officials to keep her quiet. Their marriage, once a ceremonial union, disintegrated. In 1937, Puyi married again, taking Tan Yuling as a consort. Tan Yuling was young, loyal, and devoted to him, offering him rare companionship. But in 1942, she died suddenly under suspicious circumstances. Many believed she was poisoned by the Japanese, who feared her influence over Puyi. After Tan Yuling's death, the Japanese arranged further marriages for him, each designed to keep him compliant. None brought him comfort. Meanwhile, the world around Manchukuo grew darker. The Second Sino-Japanese War erupted in 1937, and Manchukuo became a base for Japanese expansion into China. Atrocities committed by the Japanese military, such as the Nanjing Massacre, stained the puppet empire with blood. To many Chinese, Puyi was a collaborator, a traitor who wore the crown while his people suffered. By the early 1940s, as World War II raged on, Japan's empire began to falter. The illusion of Manchukuo's stability crumbled. Puyi, still clinging to hope that he was truly emperor, could do nothing to change the course of history. In August 1945, the Soviet Union declared war on Japan and launched a massive invasion of Manchuria. The Kwantung Army, once feared, collapsed almost instantly. Japanese officials abandoned Puyi, leaving him desperate and afraid. He attempted to flee by plane, carrying with him a suitcase filled with imperial seals and treasures. But at the airport, Soviet troops captured him. The dream of restoration was over. Puyi was taken to the Soviet Union as a prisoner of war. He was interrogated, closely monitored, and used as a political bargaining chip. For 5 years, he lived in Soviet captivity. In some ways, the Soviets treated him better than the Japanese had. He was given books, time for study, and limited freedom within his confinement. But he remained under strict guard, always uncertain of his fate. During this time, Puyi began to reflect on his past. He wrote memoirs, confessed his collaboration with the Japanese, and admitted his failures. For perhaps the first time in his life, he began to see himself not as an emperor, but as a man who had been used by others. In 1946, Puyi was summoned to testify at the Tokyo War Crimes Tribunal. There, he described how Japan had forced him to rule Manchukuo, how they had manipulated and controlled him, and how powerless he had been. His testimony shocked some, angered others, but it painted him as a victim rather than a villain. Still, his future was uncertain. Would he be executed as a traitor or spared as a pawn? In 1950, with the establishment of the People's Republic of China under Mao Zedong, the Soviets decided to return Puyi to Chinese authorities. He was extradited to the new communist government, a regime that had no sympathy for emperors. Back in China, Puyi was sent to the Fushun War Criminals Management Center in Liaoning Province. There, he joined thousands of former officials, soldiers, and collaborators, all undergoing reform through labor. At first, Puyi was terrified. He expected execution or lifelong imprisonment. But instead, the communist government subjected him to years of re-education. He was forced to work, to study Marxist theory, and to publicly confess his crimes. The once proud emperor was now assigned menial tasks, tending gardens, cleaning toilets, repairing tools. Every day he listened to lectures about the evils of feudalism and imperialism. Guards and fellow prisoners mocked him, calling him a relic of the past. Yet over time, Puyi began to change. The strict but structured life of the prison gave him something he had never known: discipline and purpose. He learned humility, patience, and even a degree of self-awareness. In the mid-1950s, when foreign journalists visited the prison, Puyi appeared before them dressed in a simple uniform, no longer the son of heaven, but a man who admitted his faults. His transformation surprised the world. In 1959, after 9 years of captivity, Puyi was officially pardoned by the government of the People's Republic of China. Mao himself approved the decision. The last emperor of China was now a free man, though no longer an emperor nor even a prince, but simply Citizen Puyi. After his release, Puyi settled in Beijing. He lived in a small apartment, worked as a gardener at the Beijing Botanical Garden, and later as a researcher at the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference. The man who had once ruled the empire now trimmed shrubs, planted flowers, and lived on a modest salary. For the first time in his life, he experienced something resembling normalcy. Puyi remarried in 1962, this time to Li Shuxian, a nurse who cared for him in his later years. Unlike his earlier arranged marriages, this union was one of companionship and mutual support. Li Shuxian remained with him until his death, providing him with the stability he had always lacked. But even in his final years, Puyi's life remained shaped by history. During the Cultural Revolution, radical Red Guards harassed him, calling him a symbol of feudal oppression. His home was searched, his past thrown back in his face. Yet the communist state protected him, using him as living proof of their ability to reform even the last emperor. Puyi spent his last years writing his memoirs, later published as From Emperor to Citizen. In them, he admitted his mistakes, acknowledged his role as a collaborator, and reflected on the strange journey of his life. In 1967, Puyi fell ill with kidney cancer. He died on October 17th, at the age of 61. His death passed quietly, without ceremony. The once mighty son of heaven, who had ruled over millions, was laid to rest not as an emperor, but as an ordinary man. The life of Puyi is one of the most dramatic transformations in modern history. He was crowned emperor at 2 years old, dethroned at 6, and spent the next half-century searching for meaning. He became a puppet for foreign powers, a collaborator in war, a prisoner of the state, and finally, a humble citizen. Puyi's story mirrors China's turbulent journey in the 20th century, from empire to warlord chaos to foreign invasion to revolution, and finally, to the rise of the People's Republic. The boy who once sat on the dragon throne ended his days watering plants in a public garden. His story is not just about the fall of a dynasty, but about the fragility of power, the resilience of survival, and the strange paths history can take. History is a story worth remembering. If this episode spoke to you, like, share, and subscribe, so together we can keep the story alive.